In a home where traditions ran deep and appearances were everything, darkness festered behind closed doors. This is a story about Maya, a bright and hopeful bride who entered the Chauhan family with dreams of love, unaware that those she called her own were plotting her destruction. Each smile, each promise, masked a growing storm of greed and jealousy, and soon the very walls she sought shelter in would become the flames that consumed her. Maya Chauhan was a bright, determined woman with a heart full of dreams. Her marriage to Nishant Chauhan had started like any other, filled with hope and the promise of a happy future. The Chauhans, a middle-class family from Lucknow, had a reputation for being traditional and strict. But for Maya, marrying into the Chauhan family meant a new chapter in life, one she hoped would be filled with love and mutual respect. In the beginning, Maya had every reason to believe she had found her place in the Chauhan family. The laughter around the dinner table, the shared stories, and the warmth of her new home made her believe she was truly accepted. But behind the smiles and pleasantries, subtle cracks began to show. Little remarks, harmless at first, pricked at her peace. A joke here, a giggle there. Though uncomfortable, Maya brushed them aside, convincing herself they were simply part of adjusting to her new life. As the months passed, however, the remarks grew sharper. Questions about her choices, about her worth, slipped from her in-laws' mouths, no longer disguised as casual banter. The once hidden contempt turned into pointed accusations, and while Maya struggled to maintain her dignity, Nishant remained silent. Or worse, he complained that she wasn't respecting his parents enough. The very family she had once thought would protect her now became the storm that would break her. Nishant, a quiet and ambitious man, had lofty dreams of running a successful business. His mother, Sarita Chauhan, and father, Ramesh Chauhan, shared these ambitions and believed Maya's family should help finance these dreams. When Maya refused to ask her brother for money to start Nishant's business, the environment at home grew toxic. Before we dive deeper into Maya's story, it's crucial to understand a harsh reality in many Indian rural and suburban households: the unspoken yet deeply ingrained expectation of dowry. In countless families, especially within traditional frameworks, monetary expectations often go unsaid, but are heavily implied. These expectations manifest not just during the marriage itself, but long after, lingering like an unspoken contract. The bride is often viewed as a gateway to financial gain, with her family expected to contribute to the groom's household or future ambitions, whether through cash, property, or valuables like jewelry. In such homes, the expectation of money can be subtle at first, disguised as casual remarks or gestures. Over time, however, the demands become more blatant. It's not just about wealth, it's about power, control, and leveraging the bride's family for personal gain. For women like Maya, this toxic blend of tradition and greed can turn marriage into a prison, with silent pressure forcing them to comply or face devastating consequences. Maya believed she could weather the subtle storms brewing around her. But as time went on, the weight of expectation bore down harder. They started pushing Maya to ask her family for financial support, hinting that it was her duty to help Nishant build his business. When she refused, standing firm on her principles, the tension escalated. No longer content with words, they began demanding more. Her jewelry, her pride, her very spirit. The precious pieces she had brought into the marriage, symbols of her identity and heritage, were no longer hers to keep. With every refusal, Maya found herself more isolated, her husband's silence growing more deafening. The home that was once filled with hope had become a place where her very existence was questioned. Sarita and Ramesh, driven by greed and old-fashioned beliefs, saw Maya as an obstacle, especially because they had expected her to bring more wealth into the family. Nishant, spineless and overly attached to his controlling parents, never stood up for his wife. Instead, he watched as his mother and father pushed Maya further into despair. Sarita's insults were relentless. She would tell Maya she was useless, that she was barren because no child had come yet, and that she wasn't good enough for their family. Maya Chauhan, Maya's father-in-law, was no better. A cruel and rude man, he made her life unbearable with his degrading comments. "What kind of woman can't even bring some wealth into her husband's family? Useless," he would bark at her during dinner. His attitude toward her was condescending and brutal, leaving Maya in tears almost every night. He drank heavily and would often throw objects in anger, cursing Maya as the source of his frustration. Nishant, the man who should have protected her, never intervened. Maya, isolated and emotionally battered, confided in her best friend, Sneha. During one of their secret calls, Maya broke down, revealing her helplessness. "Nishant just watches when they push me around. He never says a word. It's like he doesn't even care. He's a puppet to his mother. And his father is a monster. They're pushing me to the edge, Sneha. They want me to beg my family for money, but I won't do it. I won't ask my brother to fund Nishant's business." Nishant's business ambitions grew more intense, and so did his mother's desire to see them fulfilled. Sarita believed that Maya's refusal to bring money into the family was holding her son back. She began plotting to get rid of Maya, whispering poisonous ideas into Nishant's ear. Nishant, weak-willed and easily swayed, began to see his wife as a roadblock to his future. He wanted to marry again, this time to a woman from a wealthy family who would fund his business dreams. Sarita fully supported this plan, convinced that Maya was disposable. Maya began to notice Nishant's growing coldness. He stopped pretending to care. Whenever Maya mentioned the abuse she was enduring from his parents, he would dismiss her concerns with an indifferent shrug. "Just do what they say," he'd reply. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult?" One evening, after a long bout of drinking, Nishant and his mother's venomous words took a dark turn. As they sat together, Sarita, his mother, relentlessly filled his ears with bitter accusations against Maya, blaming her for everything wrong in their lives. With each drink, Nishant's anger grew, stoked by his mother's poisonous whispers. That night, in a drunken haze, Nishant stormed into their bedroom, his temper fully unleashed. He forced Maya onto the bed, his eyes wild with rage, and began to beat her mercilessly, his strikes fueled by alcohol and years of pent-up resentment. That night, she wrote a letter to her brother explaining everything, the abuse, the pressure, and her decision to divorce Nishant. She poured her heart out, revealing the darkest truths she had kept hidden for too long. Maya, stripped of her freedom and denied access to even her phone, clung to the hope that a single letter might be her salvation. Maya had finally decided to leave the Chauhan house and file for divorce, but she never got the chance. After a few days, in the evening, while cooking in the kitchen, Sarita and Ramesh began taunting her once again. Nishant stood by the door, watching silently. Maya's refusal to ask her family for money had pushed them to their breaking point. As Maya endured the taunts, her vision blurred, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. She felt herself growing weaker, her body barely able to hold the room spun as she stumbled, her head pounding, and suddenly everything went dark. She collapsed, fainting onto the floor. She saw the entire family standing ominously near the kitchen. Their faces, cold and expressionless, sent a chill through her. As Maya lay on the cold floor, her body weak and trembling, she felt a strange sensation. Nishant was spilling something over her. At first it was just a cold, unfamiliar liquid seeping through her clothes. Her heart raced with a growing sense of dread. She struggled to lift her head, her vision still blurred from the fainting spell. But before she could comprehend what was happening, she smelled it. Kerosene. Panic surged through her veins. She tried to move, tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. Her strength was gone, her body limp and powerless. In the next moment, a match was struck, and in an instant, the flames roared to life. Maya's screams echoed through the walls of the Chauhan home, raw and filled with a terror only known to someone on the edge of death. The fire, fueled by their wicked intent, quickly engulfed her, licking her skin with unbearable heat. She was conscious, but her body, drugged and weakened, could barely move, let alone fight back. As the flames wrapped around her, Maya's voice, hoarse with agony, pierced the night, shouting for help that would never come. She had wanted to escape, to be free of the torture, but now it was too late. The flames were closing in, burning not just her body but every dream, every hope she once had. And with a final haunting cry, Maya's voice was silenced forever. Nishant, Sarita, and Ramesh let the flames consume Maya. They carefully staged the scene to make it look like a tragic kitchen accident, believing no one would question the fire. They called for help, weeping crocodile tears and pretending to be devastated by the loss of Maya. The police initially ruled Maya's death as an unfortunate accident. The scene at the Chauhan household appeared to be the result of a tragic kitchen fire, and with little evidence pointing to foul play, it was quickly labeled as a mishap. Maya was gone, her body reduced to ashes, and the family grieved publicly, speaking of her with carefully chosen words. The initial investigation didn't raise any red flags. The police surveyed the charred remains of the kitchen, the walls blackened, and the few remaining utensils coated in soot. The only item that stood out was a small burnt plastic box found near the stove. It was collected as evidence, though dismissed as something that could have easily been in the kitchen prior to the fire. There was no immediate cause for suspicion, no clear signs of struggle, no apparent motive for harm. With nothing but ashes and a scorched kitchen, the case was all but closed. Maya's death seemed, to all but a few, a devastating accident in a home where shadows of truth were carefully hidden. A few weeks after Maya's tragic death, a letter finally arrived at her brother's house. It had been delayed due to an incomplete address, sent via normal post, with only half the information on the envelope. When her brother opened the letter, his heart sank. Maya had written about the abuse she faced at the hands of her husband Nishant and his parents. She expressed her desire to divorce Nishant, fearing for her life in the days leading up to her death. Devastated, her brother immediately took the letter to the police and lodged an FIR. A case was registered, and the investigation reopened. Although Maya's body had been cremated, and there was no direct evidence from the fire, but after deep investigation, few medical records from nearby hospitals revealed that Maya had been treated for injuries consistent with physical abuse. Sneha contacted the police with more details about how Maya had confided in her multiple times about the relentless harassment she faced for money. Maya had shared how her in-laws, particularly Nishant's mother, had persistently pressured her to ask her family for financial help to support Nishant's business ambitions. They even demanded her jewelry, and when Maya refused, the verbal abuse escalated into threats and physical violence. The forensic team, called in for a second examination, identified inconsistencies in the Chauhan's statements, despite the time that had passed. The forensic team meticulously examined the burnt plastic bottle recovered from the crime scene. Its twisted and charred form suggested it had contained a highly flammable substance. Additionally, a neighbor came forward to personally confirm that Sarita, Nishant's mother, had already begun seeking a new bride for her son, further raising suspicions. Under deep interrogation and pressure from the police, the Chauhan family began to crack. Sarita was the first to confess, admitting that she had never liked Maya and wanted her jewelry and money. She revealed that they had repeatedly demanded Maya's brother finance Nishant's business, but Maya refused. The tension escalated when Maya threatened divorce, which scared them. They feared losing both their control over Maya's wealth and the ability to remarry Nishant. Out of desperation, they sedated Maya lightly before pushing her into the kitchen fire. Although she was conscious, she couldn't fight back. They ensured she died, leaving no chance for her to escape. The Chauhans, who had thought they could erase Maya from their lives, were now facing the full weight of justice. Nishant, Sarita, and Ramesh were convicted for the murder of Maya Chauhan. Maya's voice may have been silenced by the flames of betrayal, but her words, delivered through a single letter, brought her murderers to justice. A chilling reminder that no crime can remain hidden, and greed, in the end, destroys everything it touches.